Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining us every Friday at 11 for the Skills Summer Seminar. Today, we're going to talk about money and AI and all those great things that we need to think about when we think into the future. And at the end of it, we're going to ask you to give us feedback. So stay and please tell us what you like and what you don't like. This is a reminder, a seminar. Anyone can go off mute and off camera when you have a question. We encourage you to do it. The interactive part is part of what we are offering here. So please be active. And Ryan is going to share with us a few surveys. So we would love for you to jump in quickly so you could do it. You'll see on if you could already scan with your camera the code here to go to the Slido. So you'll be ready with the questions ahead. And then with that, Ryan, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Very excited to be here. As I was mentioned, please make this as interactive as possible. So if you don't mind jumping off camera, interrupting me, being very vocal, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? The whole point of this is not to talk at each other, but rather with each other. So please feel free to interrupt and then scan the Slido. We have 4 poll questions. Really excited about them. I'd love to get your opinion. And while you're doing that, I'll just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Ryan Alshak. I'm the CEO founder of Laurel. I was a lawyer from 2014 to 2018 and developed sort of intense conviction that digital machines would remind people what we did at work versus the modality that it is today, which is I, as a person, have to remind a machine. Would like to mention this was long before the Overton window of November 22. And so we built a V1 platform, used natural language processing at the time, and then rebuilt the platform soup to nuts when I got early access to GPT-3, because I realized very quickly that LLMs would cannibalize any sort of NLP that we were building previous. And while we'll talk about time, I've always thought of time as a wedge. And the wedge is to really collect data to answer the fundamental question, what are people actually doing? And it's one of these questions that when you say it is very obvious, but when you really dig into it, you realize that we have very little visibility in terms of what we actually do as knowledge workers. Last week, we announced our $100 million Series C round. And so we've been very lucky to have the traction that we have. We are currently in market with the largest law firms in the world, the largest accounting firms in the world. And we just closed a design partnership with one of the MBB consulting firms to start opening up that vertical. And a little bit of shine for the investors. IVP has made 400 investments, 130 of which have gone to IPO. So that's our goal. Google's venture arm has seen 71 unicorns. 01A was started by the CEO and COO of Twitter and CRO of Facebook. And then a couple, I think that are really relevant for this conversation. The chief product officer at OpenAI invested in the round, and we can talk about why. And Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, invested previously because no one's ever quantified business development time. We know BD activities, we know BD outcomes, but we don't actually understand BD time. And so that's sort of an analog for how we see the company. This is me and Oz hanging out. We're very old friends. You know, we really like to go, but no. There are 3 questions. I'm very lucky. I get to speak to enterprise CXOs all over the world. And the 3 themes that I get all the time when it comes to AI is, Ryan, where do I start? How do I show value? And how do I get my people to actually embrace this technology instead of not being afraid of it? So these are really the 3 key themes I want to hit on in this presentation and really open up the dialogue. So I've been talking too much. We're going to do our first poll question. And really out of curiosity, obviously, we're all spending a lot of time and money on AI tooling. And the first question is, how are you currently measuring whether you're getting ROI from these investments? And I want you to really think critically and deeply about it. I won't talk through kind of what we see in market, but I'm very curious, as you're making these multi-million-dollar investments, how are you measuring ROI from them? So we have adoption, participation, assumptions, finger in the air. One word. I love it. Hashtag finger in the air. For the person that wrote time savings, would you mind jumping off mute and telling me how you're measuring those time savings? I agree. I'm measuring it the same way. I'm really curious about that one. Clients. Okay, so I think what we're seeing here thematically is there's a lot of qualitative measurements in place right now. So we're using adoption as a proxy metric. So there's an assumption embedded here that if people are using it, it's value. And I'd like to test that assumption. And I'll illustrate it with a story. A lot of surveys, a lot of qualitative surveys asking people, hey, is this a valuable tool? Is this saving you time? I think that's very useful. We have to always marry the qual with the quant. But I think what you're seeing and missing here is there is no quantitative measurement. And as we think about sort of what I believe to be one of the biggest business problems, not in law, not in professional services, but in any industry that's really focused on AI, is how are we quantitatively measuring the impact of this very expensive tooling? And it's a big problem. You know, we're going to spend over $1 trillion in AI spend over the next 5 years. But the truth is, we really don't know if it's working. And like, let's take a step back before we sort of unpack the problem. So this is my sort of AI chart, if you will. We talked about the Overton window. By the way, whoever Mr. Overton is, what great PR he's had in November 22. Okay, so ChatGPT goes, and you know what's so amazing about this is, as I mentioned, we were building NLP. ChatGPT was built on GPT-3, which implies that there was a 2 and a 1. OpenAI started in earnest in 2015. And so there really wasn't anything particularly magical that happened in that moment other than it hit our national consciousness, or international consciousness, rather. And so that was the move, right? It moved from sort of below the line to above the line. And I would say 2023 was the year that we all started playing around with this tooling from a consumer sense. What can this do? And we were all pretty impressed and really excited. And then it started moving into the enterprise, and all enterprises started to move into sort of like I would call pilot mode, which is like, hey, let's try a bunch of stuff. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what doesn't. And for those that stuck, I would say this year is really when you're seeing that sort of threshold cross into what I call BAU, which is business as usual. And what I like to tell investors all the time, and I think it's something that you all intuitively know, but the investing world doesn't. If you want to understand whether AI software is sticky, look what budget it comes from. If it comes from an innovation budget, this is us just trying things out. If it comes from a finance budget or sort of a P&L that's moving forward, that's probably sticky software, and we're starting to see that movement. And I think a lot of AI companies are going to be very surprised by their ARR this year because they believe that this is real, but it's just innovation, and those actually won't move forward. Next year, I believe, is to be the year of the reckoning. I'm really excited about this. This is the year of enterprise renewals. And everyone is going to ask themselves the question, great, I spent $2.1 million on this vertical AI tool. Was it worth it? Your partner should be asking the same thing. Was it worth it? This is why Kevin Wild from OpenAI invested, because he was like, Ryan, we don't know that answer. And no one does. I've spoken to Microsoft. I've obviously Google co-invested, spoken to Anthropic. No one's figured this out. And so this is something that we're all trying to wrap our heads around. And from first principles, if you think about how should we have solved this, it's very simple. No different than any other software previously. We'd have to first put some telemetry or observability in place to understand what's happening. Then you'd measure the impact. Then you'd make people process technology questions. Then you'd measure again, and then you create a feedback loop. But the reason why AI was different is because, one, this is a paradigm shift, not a platform shift. And two, we got really excited and frankly nervous about the impact. So every boardroom immediately said to their CEO, hey, what's our AI strategy? So what does the CEO do? He goes to the executive team, hey, what's our AI strategy? And so then there was sort of a push to do activities versus really doing sort of the what I call unsexy foundational work. There are two companies that I think have really nailed enterprise AI, neither of them in professional services, Klarna and Shopify. And they stole a lot of headlines in terms of what they did in terms of customer support and some of the internal agents that they built. But what the media didn't report on is that they spent 18 months building an underlying data foundation to make that work possible. And a lot of people didn't have the patience for 18 months. A lot of boards didn't have the patience of like, hey, we have to build a data warehouse. A lot of boards didn't have the patience to say, hey, we have to connect all these different systems of record to make sure everything's speaking together. And so, again, when we really take a step back, that is really what we have to think about doing. Now, I want to illustrate the quantitative measurement with a story. So one of our clients is Ernst & Young, the Big Four accounting firm. They're the number one buyer and deployer of Copilot in the world. And when they asked accountants, they like to count, right? They like quantitative measurements. When they asked Microsoft, they said, hey, we're spending a lot and we want to know if we're getting value. And Microsoft used adoption as a proxy metric. I won't share what those metrics are. And then they said, we'll send surveys. And they said, that's great. That's the qualitative. What's the quantitative? And then Microsoft sent a bunch of Viva data that was useless. And then EY pushed back and said, hey, that's not useful. Like, how do we quantitatively measure this? And Microsoft said, honestly, we don't know. And so they called Laurel and they said, EY says, hey, you have data in terms of what people are doing. Can you help us solve this problem? And that is really now what Laurel is focused on, which is how do we quantitatively measure the impact? We did a really awesome LLM study across our customer base. And the top 3 use cases of LLMs, most of you are probably using Microsoft Copilot, or the top 3 use cases of Copilot across our customer base. Number 1, Microsoft Teams chat. Number 1 use case. Is that a good use of that money? Second, drafting emails in Outlook. I could see value there. And third is prompting Copilot to see what Copilot actually does. Cool. Second poll question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how well does your firm currently map time spent to client outcomes? So we obviously are primarily T&M, time and materials in law. We're still about 85-15. And so we obviously know time. Question is, how good are you at mapping that time to understanding client value or client deliverables? I should have put some like Jeopardy music in the back or something to fill the proverbial.
Well, people answer. I'll just take on the point with Copilot. I think we've got several firms who said that they tried AI with Copilot and it doesn't work for legal purposes. So it was clearly the need to communicate what it does and doesn't do. It's great for your recommendation letters and drafting emails, but it's not the best tool for your legal research and the like.
I've been very lucky. I've developed close relationships with the vertical LLMs in legal, right? We all know who they are. And I asked all of them, hey, how do you measure ROI? And they all say the same thing, adoption. And adoption is very important. And as we know in professional services, it's the hardest game. Change management is harder than building the technology itself. It turns out if you build it, they will not just come. But adoption is only one metric, doesn't necessarily imply value. And so this is something that's, I think, really important as we think about moving forward. How do we measure these $1 trillion that's about to go in? Okay, so if you don't mind, I'd love to somebody who put number 3, some systems in place. Can anyone sort of teach us what systems that you have and what's working and not working about them?
Shy crowd today.
Obviously, everyone's like, who's this Ryan guy? Why am I, what I'm not going to listen to him. Anybody? It'd be really, really helpful. Again, just as an educational thing, I think we'd all really benefit from hearing, and hopefully the goal here is to crowdsource what's working, what's not working. Yeah, Flora, thank you.
Yeah, I have helped law firms help with these measurements, and where I've on the time tracking, it needs to be. They have usually billable systems in place, but then like tracking there where they use generative AI or not, that's a challenge. But some require it because of the outside council guidelines. Where I found it very useful is to track it more also on non-billable time, because that is where I think the lowest hanging fruit is and where it's easiest to save most. But then you get a lot of pushback on better tracking non-billable time. But I can say, like, the firm where we have implemented that, like, they saw our productivity increase by just checking their non-billable time of like 3%, just because of better timekeeping. And but there was a lot of pushback because people said, like, well, hey, I need to be able to go to the bathroom, have a hallway chat. So it was definitely not easy to implement, but absolutely worth it. If that's
Fantastic.
my 2 cents. Yeah.
That was worth $2. That was fantastic.
And Mary, you might want to.
Yes, we do. Heather, would you like to come on
Sure.
for a chance? Oh, there we are.
Although we have more kind of more personal stuff that goes on. We have like quarterly performance calls or meetings in person with some of the clients to understand, how is our time, providing value to them.
I love that. Can I speak that back? So we have something in tech called a QBR, like a quarterly business review, where we meet with our customers and we sort of say, like, hey, this is the data that we have, and then get their qualitative. Is that the sort of same thing? Like, how do you ask open-ended questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. And then do you score? I love that. Do you score that like an NPS, like a 1 to 10, or how do you track sort of the sentiment?
I know that there are some surveys. I'm not in the marketing area, and they are largely the ones that handle it, but I know there are, in some cases, depending on the client, we have a set of key clients. So yeah.
Fantastic answers. So I think,
and Ryan is just pointing out some clients are doing that NPS thing themselves, right, and imposing that on their advisors. So when you go to those meetings, they've already done the internal analysis of the value they think you provided them, and then they're presenting you with their NPS.
I met with a consulting firm in San Francisco on Tuesday, Wednesday. My days blend together, and they're all value based. They're all, but and we'll talk about. They're having a tough time understanding whether their business is positive or negative margin because they don't actually track their input well. But the data point they use is fascinating. In Salesforce, they will ask their people at the end of a project. They will put from a 1 to 5 scale the ease of delivery, and that's like sort of the extent of their apparatus in terms of really being able to understand the outcome, but then tying it back to the input. How easy was it to deliver this service? So I think just to sort of sum this up, it sounds like we're not great at this. There's no 4s and 5s, and thank you for your sort of transparency here. There's some systems in place, but most of us are trying to really figure this out. And it's a really nice segue. Like, this is my PSA. I really, 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 really want to emphasize this point, independent of this conversation or Laurel or anything. Like, AI has fundamental, like I said, it's a paradigm shift, it's not a platform shift. It's made some business problems finally accessible that have never been accessed before. In my role, I get this all the time. Hey, Ryan, like, I've been pitched sort of automated time tracking for decades. Why now? Why should I believe that anything's changed? And I said, the technology's changed. And so there are fundamental business problems that we've always wanted to crack the nut on. We've never been able to. And I'd really encourage the winners in this next 10 years are going to be the ones that, for first principles, reevaluate every business problem to ask themselves, is now the time? And that's not to say that it's going to solve everything or that it's some panacea. But I would say from an order of magnitude perspective, there are real problems that were previously uncrackable that are now able to be cracked. And the problem that I'm obsessed with is, I like to articulate it this way. Every industry has obsessed over its supply chain, except for knowledge industries, which represents over 50% of GDP. A car manufacturer obsesses over optimizing its supply chain. It knows every step from the raw materials to the OEM, to the dealership, to the end customer. Yet we really don't understand human capital. We don't understand the human input of time, and we don't understand the human input of outcomes. It's a huge problem that we've never been able to answer before. And my fundamental thesis is that AI has finally made this problem solvable. And again, it's a very large problem. And of the 50%, professional services is 15% of GDP. One of the things I like to surprise people by I live in sort of the Silicon Valley world, and we think tech runs the world. Tech is only 9% of GDP. Professional services is a larger swath of the economy than tech. If you watch CNBC, you would never actually know that. And I like to say, you cannot improve your organization until you first understand it. And it goes back to that slide of the telemetry and the measurement. We need to be able to understand time. These are some of my my favorite statistics. There's a concept in tech called a manager. When I was a lawyer, I never had a manager. I had partners that I worked for, but I never had a manager. And so it's kind of this funny concept. But if you have a manager, quote unquote, they have 2% of visibility into their team's time. Think about how hard it is to manage a team when you have 2% understanding of what they do. The average enterprise spends 14% of its organizational time focused on company goals. I'm going to say that again. They spend 14% of organizational time actually focused on company goals. That means that the average enterprise spends 86% of its organizational time not moving the business forward. The best operating at scale company is right now considered NVIDIA. I'm a huge Jensen fan. He's I'll share a quick story just because I can't help myself. He was being interviewed about 12 months ago by a journalist, and the journalist asked one of these like, hey, what would you tell your 30-year-old self? What advice would you tell 30-year-old Jensen? And Jensen stops and really thinks about it. And he says to himself, I would tell myself not to do it. And the journalist says, what do you mean? He said, if I knew how painful it was, I would tell myself not to do it. I love that. And it's like, one of the things, I have so much empathy for law firm leaders, accounting leaders, consulting leaders. It is so hard to operate in this environment, but also know, like, on our end, it's really hard to start a company. And I just think that we need more empathy in the world. That's my PSA number 2. Okay. 60% of NVIDIA time is spent on organizational goals. Best in the world. So that's the ceiling right now. And then Google ran this very kind of infamous internal BizOps study. They called it the 240-58. They determined that 2% of people at Google create strategy, 40% of people at Google drive that execution of that strategy, and 58% of people don't matter. So when we think about operational efficiency, like, these are massive, massive numbers. Massive numbers. And this is just the reality of where we are. And this is all because we have a massive blind spot. And again, it's because no industry has ever mapped the input of time, how long does it take you to do something, to the output of outcomes. Did it actually drive value for your customer in the business? And without that, how can you possibly know where you should focus human capital and where you should deploy AI agents if you don't understand what's happening? And I like to say there are industries like law and accounting that are really good at understanding the input. Are we perfect? Of course not. And that's Laurel's sort of opportunity in our phase 1 product, but we're Pareto principle. We understand time. But as we talked about on that previous slide, we're not actually really good at understanding outcomes. And that's why we price in time materials, because it's an acknowledgement that, like, hey, we're not confident yet enough to actually drive a price and value. And so we want to price in T&M. Now, on the flip side, as I mentioned, I talked to a lot of consulting firms, talked to a lot of banks actually that have the same problem. They're actually quite good at understanding the deliverables, but they have almost no clue how long it takes them to do it. And so if I hire McKinsey and I say, hey, McKinsey, here's a $500,000 fee to deliver this deliverable, McKinsey has actually very visibility in terms of whether that was a positive or negative margin business, because they don't really understand how long or how many people it took to deliver that thing. So who can map these two together? Now, that is what I believe to be sort of Laurel's unique opportunity. Floor, you must have seen the presentation before. So I'm very grateful of what you said, but I 100% agree. I think there's such a huge opportunity to understand non-billable time. So I ask you all as a poll question, when you think about your fee earner's time, your lawyer's time, what is the number one non-billable work stream? And the reason why I asked is because there's so much hype around automating client work. And I actually think there's a lot of perverse incentives there, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think we can all agree there's no perverse incentive in automating non-billable work. So what is the number one non-billable work stream that needs to be automated with AI in a law firm? Business development. I would love to unpack that with any. That is very spicy. I love that. Okay, that's not fair. You guys are just playing. You're pandering. You're pandering to me. Enough. I'm getting hot and bothered, Oz.
Okay,
It's too early.
maybe that's the time to have a little confession that when Ryan started his company, I told him, Ryan, this is a feature. It's not a product, right? I mean, what you're doing, you're just helping Intap or Elite or any place that records time be there. And he said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I said, go do it. And I think clearly there is a company out of it, or at least 100 million reasons to think that it is still a viable company proposition. So the time recording is clearly part of it, but then there are also others.
So we have a lot of time, a lot of billing, mapping strategy to messaging consistently across all the clients and in context with their needs. So before I get into the sort of whoever said business development, would you mind getting off mute? I would love to unpack that with you.
Well, that was me.
I love it. How would you walk me through your thought process?
I think a lot of the activity that we do is triggered by a signal that you could track, right? You could do a lot of what we do for BD is the client just got sued, right? So now we are pitching them for the work, or the client, we identify a business opportunity, or we just identify something that we've done successful in one place and want to take to other environment. And a lot of it is just finding the signal and then track. And then the other point is that many partners in law firms don't like that, right? I mean, they really like doing the work. They're very good substantively in the they're just great lawyers, but they don't like asking for work or offering services or interacting with things that are not in their safe zone of doing the work. So I think there's huge opportunity. And the other reason why I think it's prime is because most of the signal is external. So it's easy to use those new technologies that are perceived as non-safe, and some client will tell you, you may not use it for doing work for me yet, even though most of them at this point say, please do it. But the signal of external, it's not firm confidential information, it's not client confidential, it's all external signals. So you could use those tools. So
I think Oz is making not only the substantive point, but a very important illustrative point, which is there is an overhype around automating workflows and work streams, and an underrated amount of identifying workflows. So what Oz is saying is, hey, BD as a work stream is incredibly important, but there are workflows within that stream that should be automated away. And I think it's such a nuanced point that's being lost. And I think it's very important. There's a lot around precedent, which is interesting. I would a lot of obviously we deal with a lot of OCG, so we have compliance embedded in our time platform, and so we know that a lot of clients don't want to pay for research. So that makes I love that so many work streams, such little time. I do want to respond to Oz's point because I think it's a really important one. Laurel, what do we? People ask, hey, what are you doing with why did you raise such a large amount? There are two reasons. Number one, I want to be the first work to cash platform in professional services. And so time is a part of that, of course, but so is compliance, so is pre-bill, so is e-billing, so is invoicing, so is appeals. And so no one's really owned that stream end to end. I think it's a huge opportunity. Again, I want to be very empathetic. You would like to go to one person for everything. You don't want to have a bunch of point solutions, and I think that's very important. And then as we'll show you here, there's so much value in the data that I really want to make sure that I'm feeding that back to Way so that you can start to think about how do you run your business over the next 5-10 years. Matter of closing, yes. So much so much hype around, again, automating the work, and there's just an incentive problem. And I like to say, like, what is AI from first principles? AI is designed to save human time. How do you know? How could you have a cohesive AI strategy if you haven't first quantified human time? And to Flora's point, it's really hard to track non-billable work. it's really hard because there's no accountability, there's no incentive there. And your clients are not paying you to do non-billable work. And so there's so much hype in automating the billable work, but that's what your clients are paying you to do. The other thing, so what is my AI paradox? I believe human capital will be more valuable in an AI world. And I think Silicon Valley has done such a PR disservice to AI, and there's like, everything is like, what's the future of humanity? What's it? My fundamental premise is that we're just going to move up the value chain. We're going to be doing different things. And I want to animate it with a story. It's such a simple story, but I think it's such a powerful one. I was speaking to one of my customers. He's the chief strategy officer at a very large law firm. And he's been tasked to basically figure out M&A. They want to grow inorganically. And so he hires a consulting firm. And 2 weeks into he basically gives them the parameters of what he's looking for. And they come back 2 weeks later and they give him a list. And he's like, the list is shit. And so I was like, go do better. Comes back 2 weeks later and he's like, the list is like slightly better, but still not what I wanted. So I threw it in 03. I threw a prompt in 03. So within 16 minutes, I got a higher quality list in 1/100th of the time at 1/1000th of the cost. That is the power of AI. Now, he said, but I had a moment where I realized, well, who's going to transact that deal? Who's going to approach number one firm on that deal? Who's going to build that trust? Who's going to build that empathy? Who's going to build that business case? Who's going to build that strategy? AI is not going to do that. Or maybe it will in many, many decades. We're not going to have agents negotiating $100 million deals with other agents. Now, that is really where people will become more valuable. And again,
Ryan, that's the tech optimist and approach, and I understand why you are one. But I also remember that technology allowed junior associates to become legal secretaries. And how do we avoid the AI equivalent of that happening?
My thesis is we don't avoid it, we embrace it. And my counterintuitive take is that if AI is going to replace your job, it means that you were never meant to be in that job in the first place. It's like being in a bad relationship and AI is going to force you to break up. The truth is, a lot of lawyers are lawyers because their parents wanted them to go to law school or because they didn't know what else to do. And then there are lawyers that were put on this earth to paint with the brush that is the law. And so what are humans unique at? First principles thinking, creative thinking, trust, business development, relationship management. Those are all things that I don't think AI is, again, many decades away from competing us. But repetitive work, rote work, things that aren't in value, yeah, those people will be gone. And then guess what? They're going to go find another job where they are now operating in their zone of genius. And so humanity is going to flourish. And will reduce the input of time and maximize the output of outcomes. But I will fully acknowledge that I am in the optimist.
From your lips to God's ears, as we say here in New York.
But I want to really hammer home this point as you're thinking through your AI strategy. I just really consider you to think through making sure that like your customers, your clients are paying you to do work. Make sure you don't automate all of that away. But we can all agree on is that you should automate all the things that your customers are not paying you to do. And this is to Flora's point. We are the first to be able to understand what we've called true time. And what does that look like? Previous to Laurel, this is the value funnel. A human recorded time, and then it goes through sort of this value chain. Now you're going to see all these bars go up, but you're going to see something much more important, which is there's a bunch of time that happens behind the time that gets recorded. And that's the data set that you want. And that's the data set that's going to tell you what's actually happening. And that delta is actually going to be what you want to understand in terms of what is your lowest hanging automation opportunity. Okay, one more poll question. Again, my tech optimist. What work stream do you believe people will be more valuable in 5 years with AI than they are today? So enough of the AI is going to replace humans and we're just going to sit down on our hands and get UBI from the government. I believe there's going to be a lot of things that people are more valuable in an AI world, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of what you think these things are. human interactions, understanding their clients' needs. I love that. EQ, connection, body language. What else? Physical connection. I have a lot of thoughts about dating in the AI world, but O said that that's outside the scope of this conversation. But hey, webinar number 2, come to my dating seminar about an AI. One-on-ones, expression, creative. Yes, I believe AI will unleash human creativity. And I believe so much we are like 10% tapped in terms of our ability to create ideas and really change the game. And I think AI is the steel that's going to sharpen humanity's steel. I really do. Oh, these are great answers. Why am I an optimist? Our mission is to return time. That's why Laurel exists. It's very important to me. By the way, on the sales side, sorry, I distracted myself. AI companies are hiring more salespeople than tech history. So even though Anthropic is the same sort of business, the CEO Dario is talking about how agents are going to replace humans in the next 12 months. They're hiring more salespeople than they ever have before, which is an acknowledgement that that workflow is not going to be automated. Look at people's actions, not their words. Anyways, our mission is to return time. That is why I started the business. It is very personal to me because when 6 months into starting the business, my mom's brain cancer came back, and I moved back from San Francisco to Los Angeles to take care of her. And for the next year and a half, I was building Laurel, and I was losing her. And she passed weeks after we raised our first round of funding. And so I sat with this question like, okay, I'm building this, but I just lost this. She was my person. She was like, called her my earth angel. And acknowledge it's a story I tell myself, but life is just a story that we tell ourselves. I realized through that experience with her that once you appreciate time is finite, do you appreciate it is all that matters? And we care so much about dollars, and we're so cavalier with our minutes, and we just have that fundamentally inverted. I like to say the Greeks had 2 words for time: chronos, which is clock time, and kairos, which is our perception of time. And 1 minute with mom at the end was worth 1,000,000 minutes doing anything. That's kairos. And our mission is built on this idea that the average knowledge worker, we work 9 hours a day, but we only have leverage for 3. So as a lawyer, that means that we're doing 3 hours of work that a machine can do for us, and we're doing 3 hours of work that actually don't matter. And how cool would it be if we were able to give back that time? And so our sort of roadmap here in terms of how would we, it's a very sort of ambiguous mission statement, as you might imagine. I like to say, if you want to understand knowledge work, you need to understand the work and the time to produce it. That's our atomic unit. We connect time with work. And we do that through an automated time and billing platform using AI. And then we are now surfacing that data set, connecting to other systems of record to be able to say, hey, this is what's happening in your organization. This is how people are spending their time and what they're doing. And then the long-term vision is to say, hey, we're creating very unique data at your firm, and they're going to be very specific workflows to your firm that there is no available solution. Let's work together to automate those away. And so I really want to emphasize this point, like the atomic unit in a knowledge industry is time and work. And the unique insight here is that every industry wants the output of time data, but nobody wants to ask their professionals to actually do it. Banks don't want to ask their people to do it. F500s don't want to ask. I don't want to ask my employees to do it. But I am desperate to understand what they are doing, not in some Frederick Taylor, I'm trying to optimize the production line kind of way, but I want to make sure that you're spending your most valuable asset doing the things that actually matter to the organization, so you're not wasting time doing things that don't. And as we think about the incentive model, the future of time isn't building it, it's understanding it. And all you in KM, you are responsible for the single most important thing that's going to happen over the next 5 years, which is rewiring the entire legal industry business model. We will move to fixed fee, but the only way that we will move to fixed fee is if you understand your cost of delivery. Oz is calling his investment professional to invest in Laurel. He's like, hey, this guy, you know what? I was wrong. I'm ready to go. You have to understand your time. You have to understand your deliverables. You have to understand your supply chain. And if you don't, you won't be able to understand AI. That's the paradox here. To understand AI is to understand human capital. And we're missing this point, and we need to really grok it. I'm going to walk you through just a very quick, this is not a sales pitch. This is just meant to visualize kind of what can we do. And so really quick, this is our time platform. Previous to Laurel, of course, you'd manually input this time. With Laurel, we say, hey, why don't we just present back to your digital footprint? So we're the first to use AI to track work. We're the first to then use AI to turn that digital footprint into something that's human readable. So we group the work, we understand the client matter, we understand the summary of the work. So the human in the loop decision Greg needs to make is I want to bill for this time. Laurel will then build you a compliant time entry. It'll say who the work is for, how long you spent doing it. It'll incorporate all your OCGs to ensure that you have a compliant narrative so it gets paid, realization rates go up, and then we use a classification model to codify the work. User just finalizes it, they review their time, and then they release it into Adder and Elite or whatever ERP practice management system you're using. Then underneath the hood, now you have all this data to be able to understand really what is happening. And so again, to emphasize the point, previous to Laurel, every professional service firm only understood what a human told the practice management system. Now we know that people forget a lot. They describe things very differently. Things get kicked out because of compliance, but there's so much non-billable time that you've never been able to track. And so we will give you visibility in terms of like what that is. So when you hit scale, this is one firm that has almost 3,000 users, you get to start really understanding your workflow. Like what are people doing? What technology programs are they leveraging? What are they doing within those technology programs? And then I want to show you sort of like the art of the possible here. And I know I'm moving very fast, but I just want to be respectful of your time. So when I talk about being able to surface back the supply chain, imagine now our customers are giving us access to Salesforce, Workday, your intake system, all these things, all your systems of record. And now imagine you're the CEO of an organization. You're like, hey, show me org performance over the last quarter. By the way, I named it Mori, and memento mori in Latin means remember you will die. And so I want to always think of our time as finite. So for the first time ever, I can actually see end to end across the funnel, what are people doing? How can I create an AI strategy without understanding time? And I love Oz's point. That's why I push on the BD side, because I actually think, and I think that we're actually saying the same thing. We need to be spending more time doing BD. We need to be spending more time doing relationship management. And there's a bunch of work streams that are getting in the way of that. And this yellow bar is all the non-chargeable, all the forgotten time that we forget to bill. So I call this shadow time. So you really want to deeply understand these things. Now, of course, you can examine this data and sort of slice and dice it in the way that you want. And so acknowledgement that not all people are created equal. So maybe you're more partners, you need them doing higher leverage work. And what you're seeing here is, again, this low leverage work is preventing them from doing the things that really matter to the business, which is bottom line revenue. I always get asked the question, Ryan, how am I doing compared to my competitors? Where am I doing well? Where am I not doing well? And so being able to have a benchmark data set to say like, hey, where should you focus? And again, if I'm running a tech budget, the number one thing I need to care about is not checking the AI box, but I need to automate data collection and review if I'm running this organization, because my peers are spending a lot less time on it. And as a result, they're spending their time on higher value things. Because we track technology, because we track work, because we track time, we can start to become your trusted advisor. And then again, because time ultimately is what matters and making sure you get reallocated, you can start to understand the business case. So just a little bit of sort of a window in terms of kind of how we see the business playing into the AI world. I'm going to stop talking in 1 minute, but I want to just leave you with a few key points. Measure twice, automate once. like really do the foundational work of putting in the telemetry in place, putting the instrumentation in place. I know it's not sexy, but it's so critical. Without that feedback loop, if you do not, it used to be you cannot manage what you cannot measure. I believe in the AI world to be you cannot automate what you don't measure. And these are the three really takeaways that I want you to take away from this. So I'm 1 minute over, apologize. If you're interested in learning more about Laurel, obviously reach out to me personally, Ryan@laurel.ai. Love to walk through. If you vehemently disagree with anything I said, would love that too. And I think we're ready for Q&A.
We don't have any questions in the chat yet, but I encourage people to add their questions or come on camera and let us hear your voice. But I wondered if you could go back to, there were very many provocative slides, but there was one that had the 9 hours, 3 hours. Could you unpack that a little bit, please, Ryan?
Yeah, of course. There are, again, I use the word leverage. There are things that really move the needle for the business. And then there's like work that needs to be done, but is not creating leverage for the business. And so right now, knowledge workers and lawyers will do 3 hours a day that really move the needle for customer outcomes. They'll do 3 hours a day of work that needs to get done, but as of right now, machines are now capable of doing that work. So it's work that needs to get done, but machines and agents can actually do it for you. And then we spend 3 hours a day doing things that actually don't add value, sitting in meetings that don't matter, responding to emails that don't matter, maybe responding to interrogatories that don't matter. And so that's really the rough bucket. We do a third of our things that really matter. And my goal for people is to just be able to focus on those things. Because at the end of the day, like Daniel Pink, right? The reason why we work is to create impact, to feel like a master in our craft. And then I want people to be able to go home. And whether it's spending time with their mom or their children or their siblings or pick up a hobby or start a company. I think there's a real opportunity to, again, move humanity up the value chain. So yeah, that's the breakdown.
The underlying problem there is that the firms actually have to value people's time, not just for financial purposes, but for quality of life purposes.
Well, and this is why for all the KM folks, you have the most important job, because I'm a big Charlie Munger. Show me the incentive, I'll show you the behavior. And unfortunately, in a time materials industry, 1 hour doing work that doesn't matter is as valuable as 1 hour doing work that does matter. So until you change that incentive, until we move to fixed fee and we're actually able to allow a firm to differentiate between the two, it won't matter.
And while we encourage people to continue to ask questions, please scan or look at the link that's going to come in the chat, I think, to give us your feedback about what you like about it and what you want to see at future seminars. Just as a reminder, we're going to do every Friday until ILTA, skipping July 4th weekend. Next week, we're going to hear from our people at DraftWise, our friends at DraftWise, and we're going to have all the way until ILTA. Then we're going to take the rest of August off, and then you could submit on skills.law/seminars your request for other topics you want to hear about. And with that, back to any last questions, anyone?
I'm going to jump in with another question, Ryan, which is, to make this work, how large a firm do you need to be? How many participants do you need to have to really gain the insight?
Right now, we say at least 50 fee earners. So at least 50 lawyers, accountants, or consultants. Oh, so I'll ask you a question. What did you like and what did you not like?
I like your conviction. You're telling a very appealing story, I think. I think you made us think for a black box that seemed to be hard for a lot of us to. We all struggle with what to do with AI and how to go about it. And I think having the notion that there is an easy, relatively clear path forward is very encouraging. So I like that.
What did you not like? I love feedback.
not for you. I would have liked more people to speak up. I think it's a seminar, it's a community, it's for us to share with each other. I think people are just used to, when you go to a Zoom, to just be passive. So just being more interactive would be great. So thank you for the brave Heathers and the others who joined and spoke up their mind. And we really appreciate it. It helps. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Alexa, who helped preparing this. And thank you, Stephanie, who every Friday makes us all here. And Ryan, congratulations again on the 100 millions. I think it's one of the more impressive fundraising at this time. Also, congratulations on doing it right, just the right time before winter is coming. So we know you're going to be here for the next few years, and we like that too.